Hello, you guys, and welcome back to Esoteric Atlanta. Today, we are going back to what we do best on this channel, and that is deep dives. Now, this topic of the Sabbateans is something that I've stated before, that I've kind of tiptoed around this group since 2020. Since I opened my channel, there are some groups out there in the great world, that are very scary. And the Process Church of Final Judgment is one of them, and the Sabbateans are another one of them. And so in a lot of my research, I have tiptoed around talking about the Sabbateans, but I just kind of feel like now is the time. Now is the time for us to actually get into this religious group, and talk about it. Now, this Sabbatean group is allegedly still in function today in our world. I believe that in speculation, I do believe that is true, but I just want to remind everybody watching this right now that things are nuanced, and do your own research, and always make sure that you see proof of something before you label someone as bad. And I'm also trying to watch my words, right? You guys, I think you guys see me like pause a lot because I'm like thinking about what I can say in place of what I want to say because of YT. Now, when we talk about the Sabbateans, and we're going to be talking about more about the Sabbateans in our modern day world with Catherine Edwards in part 2. We're also going to get into Jacob Frank, who was like the real interesting character, historic character with the Sabbatean religion in part 2. But we can't really, like most things just don't appear out of nowhere, right? Like things don't just come out of nowhere. It's like usually it's like a snowball effect of things getting as big as they are. Like beliefs just don't come out of nowhere. They're grounded in something. And so in order for us to understand the Sabbatean religion, especially the Franco-Sabbatean religion today, we have to go back. We have to go back to the beginning. We're not going back to the beginning, because that would mean that this would probably be a 20-hour podcast. We need to at least go back to the namesake of this group. And in part 1, I'm going to go over this guy that kind of started this movement in the 1600s, so that you guys have a base understanding of where we're starting from when we get to Jacob Frank in the 1700s, when we talk about it with Catherine Edwards. So buckle up, you guys. If you're new here, welcome. I'm so happy that you are here. I love history, as many of my friends on this community know. I love history, and turns out I'm pretty good at researching history. My boyfriend always makes fun of me and says that's that private school education that I had, and I say no, that private school education just left me with a ton of anxiety issues. But nonetheless, I love to research history. I find history to be fascinating. I find it to be so freaking fascinating. I don't know why people are bored by history. I'm like, it's the greatest reality show there ever was. I mean, to learn things about these people that are no longer here and how their decisions affect us today is pretty wild, if you ask me. And especially as an American, I know I have a lot of Americans watching. I take a lot of, especially like Western European history, very personal, as everyone who has roots in Western Europe should. But as an American, it is very personal for me, because since I was a little kid, I was like, why did my ancestors come here? Like, what was it that really inspired my ancestors to be like, fuck it, we're not doing this anymore. We're getting on a boat and we're going to go to that other place and we're going to try over there because enough is enough. Like, what was the straw that broke the camel's back? So like the Tudor dynasty, the House of Valois that fell with the Saint Bartholomew massacre in France, the wars of religion, all this stuff I find to be extremely fascinating because it's so personal. This was the instigator that forced my ancestors to get on a boat and come to this totally different place to start a new life. And I've always said as an American, if someone didn't get on the boat when he or she did, I wouldn't be here today. And this is what inspired the Declaration of Independence, all that kind of stuff. So with that being said, if you think history is boring, I beg you to reconsider. History is fascinating. It is the greatest reality show that ever lived. It affects us to this day. It affects our lives. What people did in the 1600s is still affecting us today, as we're going to see with the Sabbatean cult. I also say history is funny too. History is nothing but petty gossip. That's all it is. In what other class in school can you learn from an academic perspective that Catherine de Medici put cow dung in her hoo-ha to attract her husband? Like, in what other class are you going to learn that? Like, it's gossip. It is gossip. That's all it is. And so when I was studying, really doing my research for this episode, I found myself laughing. I laugh at really uncomfortable things though, and probably in the moment I would not have laughed, but there is just some stuff about this main guy, the original guy, that I find absolutely hysterical looking back in 2025. But nonetheless, here we are. This is where we're going to start our story today. Just the background, the foundational information that you need to know to understand what we're going to be talking about in part 2. And today we're going to be talking about Sabbatean Zevi. I hope I'm saying his name right, you guys. I want to clarify because I know people are always in the comment section. It's crazy. Like, the smaller the world gets, like the more we're able to connect with people from other parts of the world, it's like the more angry people get. Accents are accents, you guys. The Americans are going to say things differently from the British people, differently from the Australians, the South Africans, the Canadians. Accents are just that. And if we want to get real technical about it, my friends, real technical, when I was in college, I remember studying this. So if we want to look at an actual Shakespearean accent, do you know that that's closer to my accent, a Southern accent, mixed with like an Irish accent? So for the British people who start to come down hard on the Americans, might want to rethink that. But at the end of the day, none of us were there in the 1600s, so we're probably all saying things wrong. So as an American, Sabbatean is how I would pronounce his name. Sabbatean Zevi. Okay, and this is where we get the Sabbatean faith. Now, Sabbatean and Sabbatean, these both are rooted in the Hebrew word for Saturn. If you've been on this channel for a while, if you know, right? Like Saturn. Like, get out of here. Saturn, really? Of course, it's named after Saturn. This is also where we get the name Saturday from. Saturday is the day of Saturn, hence why a lot of Jewish cultures honor it as the Sabbath. That's where we get Sabbath from, is Saturn. Sunday is the day of the sun, right? The worship of sun. That's why Christianity is a sun-worshiping religion. It's done on Sunday. Monday is the moon. So every planet is represented, not every planet, but is represented in our week. Okay. Now, another thing too, for a very long time, if you go back and look, and I'll tag that in the description box below, Catherine and I have also talked about the Saturnalian fraternity or the Saturnalian brotherhood. I've done a lot on the Saturnalian fraternity and the Saturnalian brotherhood. Some of my older videos are probably not up on YT anymore, but I will tag what I have left down in the description box below. And the Saturnalian fraternity, for those that are not aware of my story, was kind of how I started waking up. I was always very open-minded. I always thought the world was kind of weird. But back in 2016, I watched a lecture by the late, great Jordan Maxwell over the Saturnalian fraternity. And that's how I started to wake up, because it was undeniable. It's like, once you see it, you can't unsee it. It's opening up Pandora's box, right? And so here we are. We've circled back to this planet of Saturn. For a long time, our ancient ancestors all over the world thought that Saturn was the last planet. And so because it was the last planet, they thought it was the highest planet. Okay? Now, a lot of our culture still exists today that's part of the Saturnalian worshiping, like wedding rings. The rings representing the rings of Saturn. A town square, the hexagram. If you look at the top of Saturn, that's where the square comes from, the black cube, the black square of our graduation hats, the black robes that people wear, the black robes that preachers wear, the black robes that judges wear. Like, it all comes back to this Saturnalian fraternity, whether you know it or not. And that's what I mean about history, is because we see this worship of Saturn from the beginning, from the very beginning, in all these cultures, not just one in particular, but all these cultures. And that is because they believe Saturn was the furthest planet and therefore was the highest connected to God. And still remnants of that are in our lives. So Sabati Zevi was born in August of 1626. He was born in Smyrna, part of the Ottoman Empire, which is now modern day Turkey. We have a Smyrna here in Atlanta, and it's actually where a bunch of rich people live. I like Smyrna, but nonetheless, Smyrna's fun. But this is Smyrna over in what is modern day Turkey, but was then the Ottoman Empire. Now, Sabati was born to a Jewish family. Again, we're starting with Sabati, but really, if we really want to go back to the very beginning, we'd have to go back even further to talk about how Jewish culture had spread over Eastern Europe and slightly into Western Europe, but mostly into Eastern Europe. Now, there's different sects of Judaism, of course. There's different sects of Christianity. But Sabati was from a sect of Jewish heritage that was founded in Greece. And this was considered to be like the oldest sect of Judaism. So his family was steeped in this old religion, like this old ancient, they were like from that ancient group of Jewish people. Sabati also came from a very wealthy family. See, his father had actually moved the family to Smyrna from Greece because he was he was a business guy, right? Like he was in the poultry industry, and so he would buy and sell and trade, but basically he was a really good businessman. Sabati came from like an upper middle class family. Smyrna at this point in the Ottoman Empire was booming. There was lots of Jewish people in Smyrna. So even though they're going into the Ottoman Empire, it wasn't like they were the oddballs out. They had a huge Jewish culture in Smyrna all over the Ottoman Empire, and especially when it came to export and import. So even though Sabati was not raised like in his motherland of Greece, he was very much within the culture of his heritage within Smyrna, within his family unit. His family was also very educated. This was something I actually kind of respect about them, and we're going to talk about that more when we get into the religion based off of him. So for my Jewish community members, especially the women, men, you can answer too. Obviously, you would know this. I would love to hear from you in the comment section about your perspective of this. Sabati's family, his sister was pretty recognized as being pretty highly educated. And in the 1600s, this time in history anyway, all over Europe, all over the Eastern Europe, and it's kind of an interesting time for women. In the 1500s, we had some strong women like Anne Boleyn, Catherine of Aragon, like in England. We have Catherine de Medici, and again in France. We were seeing some strong women with opinions popping up. So it's like this weird transference where women aren't just like they're still kind of property, but it's like they're gaining a little bit more autonomy. I don't know, but we're still seeing, it wasn't until the 20th century that women got the right to vote, right? So we're kind of a long way for women being like equal to men as far as like intellectually speaking, but we are kind of seeing this in certain corners of the world where daughters are educated. They're being educated and their opinions are being listened to by some people in their culture. And it does seem that Sabati's sister kind of had a reputation for being pretty smart chick. And we'll see that later on, like in his formation of his religion. But with Judaism, as in a lot of, I grew up Presbyterian, and I grew up in the more conservative Presbyterian sect, and they don't allow women to be preacher. I don't even think to this day they allow women to be preachers. So there's still some of that, like in religion, where women are, women would wear head coverings. Not in my church, but there are some churches where women would wear head coverings to come into the church. There's these weird, like, cultural things. And it's not just in the Jewish culture. We're seeing this, like, again, in Christianity. We're just kind of seeing this in the world where women are the softer and the fair of the sexes. They're to be protected. They're to kind of be owned, in a sense, by their father, brother, or husband. And when it comes to Judaism, especially at this point, women didn't like read from the Torah, especially out loud, which is going to become a huge part. As I said, this is one of the things I actually do like about this group, is they start to allow women this. But nonetheless, we're not there yet. We're still in Sabbate's childhood. He's being educated in this, like, basically what would be today a private school. Like, he's a private school kid. That's how I kind of, in my layman eyes, I'm not a historian, researching his childhood, I was like, he was in a preparatory school. Like, he was a private school kid. Makes sense. He comes from a pretty wealthy family. His father's in business and trade. They're very active within their religion and their heritage. And so he is being raised basically in this educational system that would be kind of different from ours today. Again, this is the 1600s. So what was done back then isn't necessarily what's done today. A lot of the educational systems, especially in this part of the world, were based around religion. And so a lot of the laws of religion were taught in the academic setting of what would be school. So Sabati was raised to understand, he read the Torah, but he also read the Talmud. And there's a lot about the Talmud. And I went down a deep rabbit hole. I know I've talked about the Talmud before, especially when we were covering the missing books of the Bible. And at some point, as I was going down this rabbit hole, listening to all these Jewish professors talk about it and religious scholars talk about it, there's just so much to this particular religious book. And for me as a Gentile, I think there is always going to be a limit to what I can academically understand about the Talmud, coming from someone who's not Jewish and wasn't raised with this. And so again, I do ask my community members who grew up Jewish, let me know what you think down in the comment section below, because you do get two differing stories about the Talmud. There are some people that believe the Talmud is absolutely satanic and very dark. And there's some people who also believe that the Talmud is actually very nuanced. And honestly, I can go either way. I kind of see that if you think it's satanic, it probably is going to take on a satanic vibe. But if you see it as more nuanced, then maybe it takes more of a nuanced vibe. Books with paper and words on it. I'm not for censorship. We should never censor. And so I don't know. I still got a big question mark when it comes to the Talmud. And I don't think I'm ever going to figure that out in my lifetime, because there are people to this day that still spend their whole lives just studying this book. I did see one Jewish guy that said, I thought this was great. He basically said that the Torah was Jewish law and the Talmud was the instruction book on how to live out that Jewish law. And I thought, that's kind of interesting, right? That's kind of fascinating, Now, one thing interesting about this character of Satan, as I said, Satan comes from Saturn. That's where you get Sabbatean, the Sabbath. And I've known this a little bit about the Jewish faith for a while now, and I actually kind of like this aspect of Judaism. Me as a person, I don't really like organized religion anyway, but there are some aspects of religion that I can say, that's fair. I can say that makes sense. And there's this part of Judaism that's very philosophical. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that in a minute. But one of these areas of philosophy that I really respect about Judaism is the character of Satan. Again, Satan comes from Saturn, the planet Saturn. And Satan only really means for the Jewish culture, it's not like this guy, right? Growing up Christian, we believe that Satan is like this fallen angel. He's this this dude that works with Lucifer. He kind of merges with Lucifer, even though they're not the same thing. We have a totally different perspective of Satan in the Christian faith than I believe a lot of Jewish faiths do. And I actually like the Jewish perspective of Satan better. Don't get me wrong. There is absolutely evil in the world. Don't get me wrong about that. Two things can be true, right? I can really appreciate the way that the Jewish religion views Satan, but also know that there are people that do very satanic, quote unquote, things. Two things can be true. But as an individual person who myself, if you're new here, I've spent many years in India studying Eastern philosophy. That's kind of what I do outside of YouTube. I teach it. With that being said, like I see a lot of similarities to the Jewish perspective of Satan, to the Hindu perspective of demons. And I like this because I don't think this is scary. The Jewish culture sees Satan, Saturn, as the adversary, which is fascinating because the energy around the planet Saturn is what? It's karma. Saturn is father time. That's all Saturn is. And for people in the Western world who don't understand karma, karma doesn't mean anything bad. Karma is actually neutral. We label it as good or bad. It's just cause and effect. That's all karma is, right? Because you paid your electricity bill and your internet bill, you're getting to watch. The karma of that is now you're watching me on YouTube. You drink a bunch of water. What's the karma of that? What's the cause and the effect of that? You're hydrated and you probably have to pee a lot. So karma is really nothing to be fearful of. Karma is kind of the main character in a polarized world, and we do live third density. Where we are on planet Earth is polarized. We have opposites, right? Up, down, east, west, north, south, sun, moon, woman, man. So we have these polarization. We have the oppressor of Satan and then the light of God, and these are polar opposites of each other. And this causes an opposition, right? Whenever there is a direct opposition, we have friction. Friction is what is the source of creation and our density. So you think about it this way. I've used this metaphor before. I use it with my classes a lot. You have a match, like from a matchbook, a match. That singular match has everything on it that it needs to light itself, but it can't light itself unless it's struck against the matchbook. That striking of the match, that's the adversary. That's the friction. And this is what gives us reflection. Like we can't know good unless we know bad. We can't understand wisdom unless we've made mistakes. And so having that understanding of what this energy is, that it's not a fallen angel, it's just the adversary. It's, it could be something as simple as like having a sugar craving, right? Or like, maybe you're struggling with like going to bed on time. It could be something very simple like that to something even deeper, like you struggle with abandonment issues. This is your adversary, and this is what's teaching you things. In the Hindu faith, demons, the word demon is short for demonstrator or a teacher. And when you see them in that light, all of a sudden they lose power, right? Because you're like, you're just here to show me a reflection of myself. That's why we later get in later terminology that the term shadow work. That's a more modern term to describe the same thing, that you're doing your shadow work. You're observing the shadow side of yourself. You're pulling it up to bring it to the light. And I personally feel like this is a concept that we need to understand going into what becomes of the Sabbatean faith. Okay, so back to this. Sabati he was born in 1626. By the time he's 18 years old, he is basically bippity boppity boo. He's now ordained as a rabbi. He studied the Talmud, whether the Talmud is good or evil. That was very impactful in his education. I don't think this is not something weird though. I think this was just kind of common back then for a Jewish family, for the boys especially, to be very well educated in the Talmud, because the Torah was the law, the Talmud was the instruction manual on how to live that law. But there was one book that Sabati loved even more and was even greatly more affected by, and that's the Zohar. And I've spoken about the Zohar before. Again, this is another text that I think it would take me a lifetime as a Gentile to even come close to understanding the impact on a kid who grows up in a Jewish household. Once more, for my Jewish friends watching right now, give us the 411 down in the comment section below. And there is a thing about being grandfathered into faiths, like within our DNA, and this might get kind of woo-woo, but I actually believe, like, I come from a long line of Gentiles. I mean, look at me. I come from a long line of Gentiles. And so for many generations, my family has been Protestant before the Protestant Reformation. Obviously, they were all Catholic because that was the only Christian faith. I've got Presbyterian, Huguenot from France, all that kind of stuff. Lutheran. My grandmother was a Lutheran. Her family was German. So very Protestant faiths. And even though I grew up going to church. It's almost like you kind of know it before you know it because it's in your DNA from your ancestors. So I think there is something very important about being grandfathered in. It's like a snowball effect, again, within your own self. And so from an outsider looking in, even with Hinduism, and I've studied Hinduism extensively in my adult years, there's always going to be an element of the faith, this historical cultural faith, that if you weren't born into it, you're always going to be missing a little bit of it because it's not in your DNA, right? It's not your natural state of faith from your ancestors. I hope that makes sense. And so please, for my Jewish friends, give us your academic, your feelings about the Zohar. The Zohar, though, from what I understand, kind of dealt more with mysticism, which, I mean, I'm not a fan of Sabbatean. We're gonna get to it, but I'm a fan of mysticism. I think I would have been like, yeah, let's talk about magic. I don't laws, schmalls. Like, we don't need to know about the laws. Like, let's look at the magic. Let's look at like the mysticism. This also kind of gets into the Kabbalah, which again is probably a more common known practice of Judaism, is the Kabbalah. And before people get conspiratorial, the Kabbalah, like most things, can be used for good or bad. It just depends on how you use them. The Zohar also talked about, there were passages that alluded to this coming Messianic age. Now, the Messianic age would be a time period where the Messiah would come and we would transfer into this like peaceful existence. My people who grew up Christian, this probably sounds very, very familiar to you. Now let's go ahead and talk a little bit more about this prophecy of the Messiah. So the reason why Christianity, we're like Judeo-Christians, is because Christians, the foundation of belief now, it's not how it started. We're going to get into the manipulation and the propaganda from an academic perspective. So for my very zealous people, you might, just listen. This is just an academic. I'm not telling you what to believe. This is just factual academic research when it comes to this idea of the prophecy of the Messiah and the Masonic age, Messianic age. This is leading again into the foundation of the Sabbatean faith. So there was this prophecy from Jewish faith that there would be a coming Messiah. Now, we've gotten into the etymology of this back when I was going through the missing books of the Bible, looking at the real deep origins of this prophecy. And no one has it right compared to the deep origins of this prophecy. Messiah, for those who remember the actual etymology, it's turned into a word that means the anointed one. However, in the beginning, when this all started, long before Sabbatean was born, long before we were born, Messiah meant a phallical pillar. So, a talawaki, a schlong, a boy bit, the one-eyed monster. That's what a Messiah meant. Likewise, for a woman, it was the Vesica Pisces. So we're talking about anatomy, basically. And so in the beginning, when this prophecy first came about, they talked about a coming of a Messiah. So a man was going to come, basically, but there was going to be two. This has now turned into a second coming prophecy. That's not the original prophecy. The original prophecy is that there would be two people at one time that would come to switch the understanding of the ages. Now, like a lot of prophecies, like I'm not a huge Nostradamus fan in the sense that I think he was some prophet. I think he's fascinating to study as a historical character. But do I think that Nostradamus had some special psychic sense into the future? Fuck no. No. All these people talk about his prophecies and they point to things happening today, but then you look at his prophecies, you're like, yeah, but that could be really you can make that work for anything. that could work for anything, really, And I think that might be what kind of maybe is happening with the original prophecy. So if two people are coming at one time, one is going to be a Messiah, the other a Vesica Pisces, what are we talking about? A man and a woman, which explains the polarity of our existence. Feminine, masculine, sun, moon, right? Does this mean, is this metaphor? I don't know. This could have been metaphor for just a changing of ages because there's always the two involved in balance, the feminine energy, the masculine energy. We can get so deep in theory over what this original prophecy meant. we could do a whole like 5-hour podcast on going down all the different roads of what they could have meant by this. But nonetheless, a lot of people took it as like verbatim. Like they're, philosophical theory could be, just the changing of energy and the balancing of masculine and feminine energy. But most people are literalists and they're like, oh no, a man and a woman is going to come. It's going to be a man and a woman and they're going to come. So was that Yeshua, not Jesus? Jesus was not really his name. And Magdalene? Maybe. But the most important part of this prophecy, the original prophecy, was that regardless, it didn't say that they were going to come back again. What turned into the second coming was actually two in the beginning: man, woman, female, masculine energy or people, two, and that got divided and turned into one Messiah, one man that would come back again. And so the feminine just got removed completely. I hope I'm making sense. If you're confused by that, let me know. And once again, for my very religious people, first of all, if you're super, super, super religious and you're triggered easily, I'm probably not the channel for you. Thirdly, I'm not, you don't have to believe, this is up to your interpretation. This is just the academic look at this. I have my own opinions, but I do try to look at all the academic perspectives. As Aristotle said, it's a sign of an intelligent mind when you can entertain an idea without accepting it. So for my super religious people, just take this as academic study. That's all this is. It's not about your faith. Your faith is your personal choice. This is just looking at this academically so we can figure out where things went wrong. Okay? So, nonetheless, we have this vague prophecy that literally says nothing about, it's literally evolved into something else. For both Christianity and Judaism, it's turned into something else. So with the Christian faith, they believe that Jesus, or Yeshua, was that promised Messiah. And what's interesting is there were a few Jewish people who then followed the Christian teaching, but most Christians today, and in this time period, were not of Jewish origins. They were Gentile. Now, this gets into, obviously, the Roman Church, the fall of the Roman Empire, which then became the Vatican. This gets into Constantine in the 4th century. Like, that's a whole other topic. But literally, the story of Yahshua, his name was turned into Jesus, turned into the Mithra story. And so that took on that just went down a totally different road. And now we're combining what was like pagan, and pagan is a word that was created by the Catholic Church to describe any religion that's not Christianity. So pagan, these other faiths, these other cultural faiths in Europe, the Druids, all that kind of stuff, we're now merging into this new controlled, like, new world order. That's what Constantine was doing, right? He was consolidating all of the Roman Empire. Before that, it was a republic. He consolidated into one government to be forced by a penalty of death to take this new faith that allegedly started in Judaism. That's why a lot of Christians today, which I happen to agree, don't think that the Old Testament should actually even be a part of the Christian faith. I agree with that, even though I'm not a fan of Christianity in general. I agree with what they're saying, because most of the people who are in this faith are not Jewish. They don't have the backing of the Torah. Even though the Torah is in the Old Testament, they don't have that cultural understanding of the Talmud and the Zohar and all that kind of stuff. There's a lot here that's missing. And therefore, this faith of Christianity is now taking on more of a Mithraic faith, okay? So, back to that Messiah. So that's gone off. So this theory that the Messiah has already come, he's going to come back again, which was never the original prophecy, but whatever, here we are. That's now packaged with a bow. It's over in Europe. It's been in Europe for a long time. We are in the 1600s, so we're like right coming towards that end. Still a lot of violence, but we're kind of at the end of that now Protestant Reformation, where now Christianity has fractured into multiple different flavors, like Baskin Robbins. There's 39 different flavors of which Jesus do you want today? You want the Methodist Jesus? You want the Presbyterian Jesus? You want the Catholic Jesus? It's your choice, right? What are you feeling like today? We've got Baskin Robbins flavors of Christianity happening over in Europe. We've got the settlement of the New World. So we've got people hightailing it, like my ancestors, as I said in the beginning, probably some of your ancestors, hightailing it over to the New World because shit's getting wild in Europe. People are being like burned at the stake and like getting their head just because they picked the wrong flavor of Jesus. So people are like, yeah, we're gonna skedaddle. We're just gonna skedaddle on over to this other place. So that's happening. And we've also got this fracturing of Jewish faith too, where we've got Jews up in Poland and the Eastern Europe. There's some trickling into Western Europe. We've got all these different rising philosophies around when the Jewish people believe their Messiah is coming, because that's the big difference. If we take it back to the Judeo-Christian, Christians believe Messiah has already come. Jewish people are still waiting for the Messiah. And that's the important key here, my friends. The Jewish people are still waiting for this Messiah. Whether that's one man coming or a man and a woman, whatever it may be, they don't believe. That's the big difference, right? That the prophecy has been fulfilled. Now, we also have this other element to this idea of this messianic age. And this is the philosophical Messiah. So these are we're going to talk about two different theories now within the Jewish culture, where they're like, yeah, Satan's just he's a concept for an adversary and your karma. It's just a way for you to learn. And we do have this messianic age coming because of prophecy, but we now have two different philosophical views on what this messianic age is going to mean. I hope you guys are following. I know it's probably shocking for a lot of people because it seems so black and white, right? Especially if you go up Christian, like, here's the promised Messiah. But then you look into it and you're like, holy shit, there is like a card catalog full of all these different perspectives on this one philosophy that makes it a total shit show of just different ideas. It's that saying, opinions are like assholes. Everyone's got one and they all stink. Like, that's what we're talking about in the 1600s. Opinions are like assholes and they all stink. Right? So here we go. Philosophical Messiah. So some people believe that the coming of the Messiah would be a wise or moral king of the Jews, which honors God's law and ensures the integrity of the land and the people and the temple. Okay, so this also means with this philosophical Messiah, this one theory, this one camp in the 1600s, that they're waiting for this coming Messiah, that it could literally be anyone. So within this, they're like, it could just be some random king. There could be multiple messiahs who just decide to live in accordance to God's law. Like, it doesn't have to be like one man. It could be anyone, right? They're a little bit, in my opinion, the philosophical Messiah people who believe this theory, they're a little more laid back, right? They're like, it's cool, bro. You know, there's probably got their doobies, like, it's cool, my friend, it's cool, bro. Like, we're just going to wait. We're going to wait for somebody. Maybe it's going to be a few people just to be like, hey, let's have peace on earth. Let's just honor God. And it could be a whole team of people. Like, you know, they're, in my mind, they're kind of the hippies of the Jews, right? They're like, yeah, it's probably going to be like a couple people. Now, I want you guys to understand, too, something I before we get into that, the other camp, because this other camp is going to go back to what a lot of the Christians believe, that this coming Messiah would literally be the Son of God. Now, this was never a part of the original philosophy. Scandal, right? Scandal. I can hear the fundamentalists clutching their pearls right now. Sorry, facts are facts, feelings aren't facts. That was never a part of the original philosophy, was that this was going to be some special human that was not like the rest of us. This was just going to be a man or a woman or both, depending on, or many, depending on what school of thought you followed. And this is, I promise you guys, this is all important because this is kind of the crux of the Sabbatean faith, okay? So you have to understand this background before we get into the real dastardly deeds and debauchery of this cult. So one thing too, so they weren't looking for someone that was going to be perfect and was going to be the Son of God. And in fact, when Yahshua was here, Yahshua was never considered to be the Son of God until the Council of Nicaea. All of that was changed in the Bible. That was changed. He never called himself the Son of God. He never considered himself to be any different from any other person. That was changed, and that caused, there was a lot of fighting going on around that, and the people, Constantine won because he was a tyrant. You know, he boiled his wife alive and chopped his son head off after he supposedly found Christ. So there we go. You know, Constantine's just going to Constantine. Psychopaths are going to psychopath. And basically, like, people really tried to stick up for this idea in the beginning, the early Christians, that he never said he was literally a son of God. He just said he was a human being. There was this huge battle going on. And they had to basically take the knee to this belief that Jesus was the Son of God or Yahshua was the Son of God, or else get their head chopped off. So needless to say, most of them capitulated. That's why we have a lot of the missing books of the Bible that were banned and were found in a lot of tombs, because even though on the outside they would say like, okay, we'll agree with you, inside they had their own beliefs. And so they would hide these manuals that then got that banned. Now this is important too, because again, this goes back to the original philosophy with the Jews who are waiting for their Messiah. So they're not expecting their Messiah to be like the Son of God. They're just expecting their Messiah to be this man who has this messianic age where there's peace and they're living under God's law. The idea of him being the Son of God is a purely modern day Christian thing, okay? So we have to understand that before we get to this greater problem with this cult. Another thing we have to understand about this is that they believed that this person or people would be, in fact, Jewish. Now, this I'm not so sure was really important to the original people who created this philosophy or this prophecy, we'll say. I don't know. I don't know. Now, we have a problem. We know that there is this whole story about the Jews being God's chosen people and that the Messiah would come through the Jews. Again, that who knows if that was part of the original prophecy or not. With the Jesus character, though, with Yahshua, we have a problem. It was changed because and I know this is going to ruffle some feathers. If it ruffles your feathers, that's a you problem. If it triggers you, that's a you problem. You can believe whatever you want to believe, but this is coming from factual records, okay? Facts are not feelings. Feelings are not facts. The real guy, Yeshua, was not Jewish. Clutch your pearls, right? Oh my God. Scandalous, right? So scandalous. He was not Jewish. He was an Essene. So what is an Essene? Essene is a priest or priestess of Isis, a C. That's how they spelled Isis back then. So Yahshua was what? Egyptian. He was Egyptian. Now, honestly, it doesn't matter. In my opinion, this is my opinion now coming with faith is faith. Like we are not our races. We are not our cultures. Our cultures and our races are just an experience for this life. Our soul is none of that. There are valuable people, beautiful, amazing, enlightened, incredibly awe-inspiring, God-inspiring people in every single culture around the world, right? And around the world, you're going to find amazing people. You're also going to find some assholes in every single group around the world. Humans are humans. Humans are just going to human. That's just what they're going to do. So in the greater step for me, when it comes to faith in God, it doesn't matter if Yahshua was an Egyptian or Jewish or a Gentile or some accountant named Ned. Like, who cares? It was his teaching that was important. They called him teacher, which is why in the Council of Nicaea, where they rewrote the Bible, they edited it and they changed it, they made him Jewish. That even got even more hammered home with James I of England, VI of Scotland, when he did the King James Bible. They really tried to change the narrative. They gave him the Mithra story along with changing his ethnicity. And that's why we don't have any type of idea of what he actually looked like. The picture we have of Jesus is Cesare Borgia. Story for another day. So nonetheless, that's a huge problem for the prophecy from the Christian perspective. Is the real guy was not Jewish. He was Egyptian. But then we go back to the original prophecy. We don't even know if they specified whether he was going to be Jewish or not. We have a big question mark there. But as this prophecy, as we spoke about before, has changed and evolved, that's now part of it. Okay, so I think there are a lot of Jewish sects that do recognize that Yahshua was not Jewish. And so obviously that is why a lot of Jewish people did not follow him. Some did. He had some follow him. Obviously, he took part in Jewish holidays and festivities, so he had some students that followed him. But a lot of the Jewish people did not follow him as the Messiah because he was not Jewish. And so therefore, we can rule him out from their perspective as the coming Messiah. Once again, please do not leave abusive comments in the comment section. If you feel like you need to leave an abusive comment just because we're talking about factual history, then I would beg you to reflect on who your God actually is, because this is just history. This has nothing to do with faith. This is just building us up, our foundation of what we've gotten ourselves into with the background of all of this stuff. Okay, so with all that being said, we talked about the philosophical Messiah. Now we're going to talk about in the mythological Messiah. So this mythological Messiah is what's gonna really propel Sabbatean, Zevi, and the Sabbatean cult that's going to rise, and Christianity. So talking about all of that, we talked about the hippy-dippy philosophical people, like, it could be anyone. They're just going to be cool people that just do the right thing, right? To now we have the polar opposite of this belief. And these are two belief systems in the same time frame of the mythological Messiah. And this was a chosen one, so one person who will upend the natural human order and usher in a cataclysmic age free of all sin. And Judea would be at its head. That sounds more like Jesus, doesn't it? The Mithraic. So a lot of people, whether you are mainstream Christian, whether you are Jewish, there's that similar concept of this old prophecy that's taken on totally different lives of its own in different areas of the world. This is a common mythological idea that the Messiah is going to come in, he's going to upend everything, there's going to be cataclysms, but it's okay. It's going to end in peace, and Judea would be at its head. Okay? That's what Christians believe is going to be the second coming of Christ, and this is what the Jewish people who follow this particular philosophy think is going to happen when their Messiah comes for the first time in the 1600s. This is in the 1600s, guys, so let's just remind you that this is way back when, okay? So this is the world that Sabbatean Zevi is living in. There's all these compartments, these spinning little discs that are moving around within his culture, within his family's history, within the past, like, over a millennia in Europe. And of course, because of his father's job with trade, Sabbatean himself never really leaves. He goes into Egypt, he travels around a lot, but he doesn't really leave this area of the world. He kind of stays in this area of the world. But nonetheless, we know that his father worked a lot with English traders. So Sabbatean had a lot of influence from other parts of the world, right? He probably had a lot of influence from Christians too. You know, that I happen to wonder, like, was he subconsciously influenced by the Jesus character in his own perspective of this too? I don't know. That's something we can only speculate on. But he was in a very worldly situation. So even though he was highly educated in the Talmud, in the Zohar, he was a rabbi by 18, he definitely was following this idea through this messianic age that was coming, the Kabbalah's teaching, this mythical idea of humans having this magical element, ask and you shall receive, seek and you shall find, that the Messiah was going to come in this mythical way, and he was going to up in the earth, everything was going to be changed, there's going to be cataclysm, and then all of a sudden, boom, we're in this messianic age with this one ruler that's now going to conduct everything from Judea, that's going to come through Judaism. Right? We got that. That's the main mythology, and that's very common. This one is a very common one. The philosophical, messianic guys, again, in my opinion, they're the hippies that are like, it's cool, bro. They're a minority. Okay. We also have something happening with Sabbatean that I find very interesting. I find it all interesting, but I kept thinking about, as I was studying about Sabbatean's childhood, I kept thinking about Richard II. That might not mean a lot to a lot of you people watching right now. Richard II was one of the worst kings that England ever had. Like, this dude, Shakespeare wrote plays about him. Like, he was a brat. He was a narcissistic, megalomaniac brat. He was raised to be a brat. So Richard II was the grandson of Edward III. His father was the Black Prince. He died, and then Richard II Edward III had lots of sons. This is what kicks off the War of the Roses. And this is not an episode about the War of the Roses. I've talked about that a lot, but I want to give you guys who've been with me and you've heard me talk about this, a little bit of insight into what we see with Sabati, his personality, because I see a lot of similarities between Richard II and Sabati. So Richard II was the only son of his father, who died young, who then he got bumped up to next in line to take the crown, and his mother. And his mother spoiled this kid rotten. Richard II became the king of England at a very young age, like 6 or 7 years old. Like, ridiculous, right? Of course he had regents, he had people ruling in his place, but he had been raised himself to feel like the Messiah, to feel like he was better than everyone else. And yes, we could say that about royalty in general, that they believe their divine right, they believe that they are supposed to be here. But with that being said, like, I don't believe in royalty as a concept. I think it's stupid. I think it's dumb. I think it's moronic to think that there are certain families that are just blessed to rule. But with that being said, two things can be true. Even though I feel that way, there are some kings like Henry V that were really good kings. And with Richard II, and the reason why again, this is going to kind of mirror Sabati. Richard II was born in the 1300s, though, so he was about 300 years before Sabati. He was raised to believe he was he was mommy's special boy. He could do no wrong. And when he became king, he acted that way on the throne. And this was weird because even though kings had the ultimate authority, by the time Richard II came around, he had to go through Parliament. He couldn't, they had to make decisions based on the realm. The king's responsibility was protecting his realm. But for Richard II, it was all about him, which is why his cousin, Henry Bolingbroke, basically usurped him because he was destroying his kingdom. And the same thing can be said about Sabati as well. And if you know a lot about Richard II, I want you to take that information of this spoiled, narcissistic, malignant narcissist, megalomania, that's Richard II, mommy's little special boy, that could never got everything. He was never told no. He got everything he wanted. He's got all this power at like 6 or 7 years old. And throwing temper tantrums affected the country. I want you to now take that and put that with Sabati. Now, Sabati was not born into a royal family, but he was born by his mother. He was coddled to make him feel like he was the Messiah. Now, there's a compilation of a passage from the Zohar at this time, this mystical book that talked about this messianic age, that basically stated they thought that the Messiah would be coming in 1648. There were also a lot of Christians who believed the second coming would be coming at 1648 due to all the numerology and the math magic that they would do from the Bible. I mean, I'm kind of inside laughing because people are still doing this shit, right? People are still doing this. I mean, there literally was just this whole rapture TikTok going on a couple months ago, right? Like, people are still doing this stuff. They think they can figure this out. And I'm like, y'all know that Bible was edited like multiple times. So good luck, but that's not reliable when it comes to knowing any specific date of importance. But nonetheless, here Sabati is. He's been named after the Sabbath, after Saturn. His mom has raised him like he can do no wrong, that he is the coming Messiah. He's deeply educated into this mythical form of Judaism. He believes in this mythological Messiah. And here comes this date of 1648 that's approaching. He believes now, he's starting to think that he is the Messiah. This is where this whole problem kicks off. He thinks he's the Messiah. Now, what's interesting about Sabati is that a lot of times historians and historical psychiatrists will not diagnose people with mental disorders who are no longer with us. That's a huge thing, ethics thing. They can speculate, but typically they won't diagnose. But with Sabati, he's kind of the exception to the rule, which I find fascinating. Like, the evidence of his behavior must be so overwhelming that historians and psychiatrists feel comfortable breaking that rule of ethics and go ahead and they have diagnosed him as bipolar, that he had a severe case of bipolar disorder. And this was something that helped fuel his grandiose belief that he was the coming Messiah, right? He also, again, grew up in the lap of luxury, and so he's obviously, in a sense, kind of spoiled in the same way, not exactly in the same way as Richard II, but obviously this kid was not told no a lot. He could do no wrong. His name is everything. This is it. I'm the Messiah. Look at that, me. And with his bipolar personality, a lot of times these personality disorders, untreated, which obviously would have been untreated back then, can give this kind of almost mythological, charismatic energy, right? People who, think about narcissists, they're very charismatic. A lot of people who have bipolar can be very charming and very convincing when they're manic, right? And so this is like a wild animal set loose with this idea that he is the Messiah, that he's the one that everybody has been waiting for. 1648 comes around and Sabbate's like, you're welcome. Here I am. Love me. Love me. Praise me. Love me. Love me, fans. Be my fangirl. Be my fanboy. Be my stan. Love me. Because I am your Messiah. I am the answer to all your prayers. I am exactly what you've been looking for. I am the person that is going to redeem the house of Judea. And I am the Messiah. I mean, you're so welcome, people. Like, here I am. So he proclaims this. A lot of people are like, what? You know, like people kind of like we are when people say this wackadoo stuff. People are like, I don't know. I don't know. Old Sabby, I don't know if, maybe not. So he gets a lot of pushback. He starts going into the temples, the synagogues. He starts breaking a lot of Jewish law. In Jewish law, you're not supposed to say the name of God. Again, help me out, Jewish friends. Let me know in the comment section below more about that. But he starts breaking all these rules. He's like, yeah, the rules don't apply to me, which is such a grandiose narcissist, right? Like, no. Rules for thee, but obviously not for me. Like Animal Farm, some are equal, but others are more equal than others. Like, he's very Orwellian, right? He's like, ta-da. They don't apply to me because I am the Messiah. And so he's going into the synagogue and he's breaking all these laws. He's saying the name of God. He's pissing a lot of people off. I actually think he pissed off more people than Yahshua did, because at least Yahshua was also doing like miracles and was like nice to people. Like he was actually nice to people. Like he defended people. He cared for people. He cared for animals. We saw that in the Gospel of the Holy 12, the Gospel of the Nazarenes, which was one of the missing books we went through that made me cry. He was so loving and caring. We cared for and loved on sick animals. He was a really good person. That's the big difference. Yahshua was a good person. He didn't have to be charismatic because he genuinely cared about people and he wanted to love on people and he cared about individuals. To be Christ-like is to care about the individual, to sit and speak with the individual for however long it takes to help them find their own peace and their own joy. Sabbati, on the other hand, was like, I'm the rock star, not you. I'm the great. He was total opposite of that. And so he's arrogantly going in the temple. He's breaking all the rules. And he also, this makes me laugh. Like what a shit show. What? There's a story where he was like giving some sermon. And I guess he's in one of his manic moods, right? And he swears with his passion that he levitates. That he can levitate. And so he asked his friends that are like forced to like travel around with him, like, did you see that? Did you see me levitate? And all his friends are like, no, bro, you didn't levitate. Your feet were right on the ground. And he goes, oh, you're just not worthy enough to see me levitate. Like, what a prick. Like, what a douchebag. Like, I've dated a few guys like him. Let me just say that. Like, what a narcissist. Like, ugh. Of course I levitated. You just didn't see me levitate because you're not worthy enough, because you're not the Messiah. So he kind of gets this like pompous attitude. By the early 1650s, he has pissed everybody off in Smyrna, which is kind of hard to do, I think, because Smyrna's kind of a big city. Like there's a lot of people, right? He was a small fish in a big pond that became a big fish in a big pond, and he gets like kicked out. Like he and his few collection of followers get kicked out. They're excommunicated. They start roaming around this area of the world. At this point, like, the only way Sabati can manage to pay his way is by his brothers supporting him. So his poor brothers are having to like send him money, because you would think with all of his magical messianic powers, he would just make money appear. But obviously that was not, maybe that's beneath the Messiah to make money appear. And so his brothers were having to like bankroll their mentally disabled brother, who's running amok all over the Ottoman Empire. I mean, to be a fly on the wall for this show. He gets married. He then refuses to consummate the marriage, and so the wife and him get divorced. He then marries like a Torah scroll, an inanimate object, to prove that he's like, it's the Messiah. He ends up in like 1658 in Constantinople, which is now Istanbul. And in Constantinople, he gets flogged and put in like jail for a few days because he takes a fish, he dresses the fish up like a baby, puts it in a cradle, and tells people that this was a metaphor that the Messiah was coming in the age of Pisces, which we know that was the age of Pisces. Anyway, I mean, this guy, I mean, talk about one flew over the damn cuckoo's nest. This guy was redacted. Like, he literally just megalomaniac. This is what happens when you have a spoiled brat when your mother spoils you, your mother's special little boy, but you're also have some mental health issues. Like, this is what happens. And your poor brothers are having to like foot the bill because your weird ass thinks that you're the coming Messiah and that you're levitating. And you're marrying a Torah scroll, like inanimate objects. Like, I will say, like, Sabati's life is definitely way more entertaining than Yahshua's life was. As an outsider looking in, this is definitely some kooky stuff going on. And the fact, I mean, it was Mark Twain who said the truth is often stranger than fiction. Absolutely, this sounds fiction, but it's not. It's not. It happened. And so he's in Constantinople, and he gets jailed for this whole fish fiasco of him dressing a fish like a baby. And I mean, I'm laughing too, because I'm pretty sure that same stuff happens down at Piedmont Park here in Atlanta, but with the homeless people, but people just ignore it nowadays. So I'm kind of laughing at that too. But something kind of ironic happens, which not ironic. I think this is actually pretty common for humans. The more this guy is persecuted, the more followers he picks up. And all of a sudden, because he's crazy, like, he's literally, you know, completely one flew over the cuckoo's nest. He's got this crazy personality. He's doing this wild shit. These almost tall tales, folklore around him start to spread around the world that he's performing miracles. He's not, let's be clear. He's not performing miracles, but because of his antics and his eccentric behavior and his diabolical personality that's flipping back and forth, love you one minute, hate you the next, he would go on these manic highs, as you do with bipolar. And then when he would crash, he would go and sleep for like weeks at a time, and people would come up with stories that he was off meditating when he was literally just having a crash. And then he'd come up in that manic high again. And it just, like, cue Miley Cyrus's song Wrecking Ball. Like, he came in like a freaking wrecking ball into people's lives. But it was so big and so eccentric that these tall tales, this folklore, and people were like following him from Eastern Europe and getting word from him because, oh my God, like, what is he going to do next? Like, what is this dude? It's like the Real Housewives of Beverly Hills on steroids, basically. You know, he is literally, this is the 17th century's idea of a reality TV show. While he's in Constantinople, he meets another very eccentric rabbi named Abraham Yachini. And Abraham Yachini was so certain that Sabati was the coming Messiah that he created a false document from Solomon that claimed that put Malachi, Sabati's father's name, as being the father of the coming Messiah. So he forged this documentation to say, oh, I found it. No fear, my brothers. All these people who spend their whole lives in Jewish culture studying the Torah, studying the Talmud, but no, don't worry, this one preacher has it. So now Sabbaty has license. He has even more license to run around saying, see, here I am. I'm in the Torah. I am the prophesied Messiah. By this time, he goes back to Greece, which is his motherland. This is an area in Greece that he settles, which is a huge hub for Kabbalah, for Judaism. He's gaining even more followers, more and more Jewish people. Now, this is the thing, Jewish people, right? Like with the whole Yahshua thing, Jesus thing, it was mostly Gentiles. Now we've actually got large movements of Jewish people now following him, believing that the prophecy has been fulfilled. He is the coming Messiah. In 1660, Sabbaty lands in Cairo, Egypt, where he happens to meet another very eccentric Jewish man. And this is the guy named Raphael Joseph Halabi. Hope I'm saying his last name right. I don't speak Hebrew, so Raphael Joseph Halabi. Now, Raphael Joseph Halabi reminds me again of a Mr. Burns character from The Simpsons. This is why history is so enjoyable. Like, we know these people. Like, even though this was so long ago, over 300 years ago, we know these types, these archetypes. Like, the landscape might change, science might change, technology might change, but human personalities don't really change. So this Raphael was this super wealthy, very eccentric Mr. Burns type character of Cairo. Yeah. And he's very devout. He probably had, thinking about it, he probably had some personality disorder as well, but who knows? He would fast. He was very religious, very devout. He would fast all the time. He would beat himself, kind of like the Christians that do that, where they beat themselves with like a cat of nine tails or whip themselves in order to be in obedience with God. I mean, this guy had like more money than he knew what to do with, so he was finding activities to do to like preoccupy him in his days, because bro doesn't need to work, he's wealthy. And so he becomes friends with Sabbaty, who he also thinks Sabbaty is this coming Messiah. We've just got like this entourage of just personality disorders. Again, one flew over the cuckoo's nest. Like, they all need to be in a psych ward together. They all need to be in a mental hospital together, because this is just wreaking havoc in people's lives, this Messiah. Again, with Yahshua, at least Yahshua was actually helping people and was actually loving on people and caring for people and doing work and like getting his hands dirty. Sabbaty is a spoiled brat with a mental disorder who's done nothing to help anybody, but he thinks just because he might be the Messiah that he doesn't have to do things to help. Anyway, you guys get what I'm saying. So now Sabbaty not only is getting money from his brothers, but now he's got this really rich, eccentric Mr. Burns-like character bankrolling him. During this time, the Ottoman Empire, which was in control of this whole area, was putting a lot of pressure on Jewish communities in Jerusalem. The Ottomans were heavily taxing these Jewish communities to the point where people were going bankrupt. And so this is the one thing Sabbaty did do. It's not a miracle, and he did it, in my opinion, in a way to garner more power for himself. Like, bad people will do good things sometimes in order to manipulate people, So Sabbaty's like, oh, shucks. All these Jewish people who I need their support. Like, I need these Jewish people to believe I'm the Messiah to play into my delusions. Like, it's selfish, right? He needs them to play into his delusions of grandeur. So he goes to his friend, Rafi, the rich guy in Cairo, who's a lunatic, and says, hey, you have more money. Like, the DuckTales with the uncle that swims in money. Like, that is basically this guy, Raphael in Cairo. He's like swimming in money at night. He's got more money, doesn't know what to do with it. And he's bankrolling Sabbaty, and Sabbaty goes, hey, my friend, our brothers and sisters are being taxed like crazy by the Ottoman Empire in Jerusalem. Maybe you can take some of your money and give it to the Ottomans to help them relieve their pressure, their financial strain. And for old Rafi over in Cairo, like, this is like pocket change. She's like, yeah, cool. Who do I write the check out to? Where do I send the money order to? And so that gives Sabbaty a lot of prestige now, because he has now gotten the Jewish communities in Jerusalem out of this financial chokehold. So now all praise him. He obviously, I mean, obviously is the Messiah, right? I mean, we get that, right? Like, obviously this dude's the Messiah. I mean, where have we been? Hello, obviously. Now, we have a whole other character that we're going to add to this like hodgepodge of mental illness. And that is the woman who would turn out to be his next wife, you know, besides the Torah scroll, Sarah. Now, Sarah, she is a case study in herself. Lord have mercy. Let me tell you about Sarah. Let's gossip a minute about Sarah. So Sarah was a Jewish girl that was living in Eastern Europe. So she was not from this area of the world. She was in Eastern Europe. She had been orphaned and was being raised in a convent, so a Christian convent. At 16, she escaped, ran to Italy, started having these like visions. She became known as like a fortune teller, and she told everyone that she was going to marry the Messiah at 16. She was also a prostitute as well. So, I mean, no shame in your street game. Like, girls gotta eat. Like, I'm not making fun of that profession. Like, you do, not the profession for me, but I think most women that get stuck in that profession historically, it's like they gotta eat. And so that's what they do. And so at 16, again, she runs from the convent. She's now doing fortune telling, and she's hooking, you know, and, you know, she started telling people, I am going to marry the Messiah. Well, her reputation also grows. So she is like the most famous hooker in Italy at this point, because that's where she ran, was to Italy. Then we've got Sabbatean like over here, like kind of in that cradle of the Mediterranean, bopping around. He keeps getting kicked out of towns and then like using his rich friend to like help people to give him more. It's a shit show, y'all. Like, Young and the Restless. Like, this is the Young and the Restless. Sarah's over here hooking and like reading fortunes and palms and telling everyone she's gonna marry the Messiah. He's over here like doing his shtick, believing he is the Messiah. And then he hears of this girl. He hears of this girl, Sarah. And he's like, well, that's funny. That is so funny. She should say that, because God told me in a dream that I was to marry an unchaste woman. Like, you can't make this shit up. Tell me these two aren't soulmates. Like, out of all this whole story, I'm like, these two were absolutely meant for each other. So he doesn't care that she's out there hooking, right? Like, he's like, yeah, God told me that the Messiah should marry an unchaste woman. I'm not going to be marrying a virgin. So like, he's like, bring her hither to me. Bring my hooker to me. She is right. She is correct. Because I have had these visions too. Now, you know, he's a little older than her, so I'm sure he was like, oh yeah, she probably knows a few things in bed, so sounds like a fun time. So he marries her. This also, her personality also like adds to this like snake oil salesman personality that he's got going on. Like, talk about Barnum and Bailey before Barnum and Bailey even existed. I am sure this was like a freak show. I mean, you probably saw them coming through your town and you're like, let me get a ticket. Like, this is wild. I mean, these people are living these, I'm sure she had personality disorders too. Like, this is a clusterfuck of just eccentric, narcissistic, wild stuff, and I'm totally here for it. Like, as long as I don't have to live through it, if I can just observe it from history's perspective, I'm totally down for it, because it's also entertaining. And so they get married, and she also pulls more followers to him, because she got that reputation of claiming, I'm going to marry Messiah, and lo and behold, she's married the man claiming to be the Messiah, who's now got a huge following. And they consummate the marriage. He boinks her, and he says because he boinked her, she is now made a virgin again. I don't think that's how that works, but you know, if you know, apparently he's able to levitate too. So it's Sabbate's world. We're just all a part of it, right? Like, it's his world. We're just all a part of it. So there's that. They're like the power couple now of this whole messianic age. They are literally the Brangelina of the Messianic age. This is so wild, you guys, that now this story of Sabbaty has now reached Western Europe. So it was one thing to reach Eastern Europe because there were a lot of Jewish communities in like the Poland area. They, borders changed a lot, but there, you guys know that, like, the northern Russia, like there are a lot of Jewish communities there. Hence why, World War II happened the way it did. This is just a lot of communities. So the Yentas are yenting. They're gossiping about this. It's spreading. Word is spreading in the Eastern European, but it's also spreading in Western Europe, where you have a little bit of Jewish communities, but it's mostly Gentiles. This becomes like the tabloid sensational story. So newspapers were covering Sabbaty. People all over continental Europe and England were rushing out to get their newspapers to read the latest story on Sabbaty and Sarah. This, I kid you not, like when I was researching this, I was like, no shit, I'm enjoying this. Like, this is entertaining. Like, what is he going to do next? What is this freak gonna do next? I mean, Barnum and Bailey, snake oil salesman, like here it is. Even these Gentiles who absolutely do not believe he's the Messiah, by the way, most of them, because they're pretty solid in their Protestant faiths, are still just like, let me get my glasses. I need to read. This is crazy. Have you heard about this old Sabbaty and Sarah? This is wild. So he is quite a rock star. And this, at this point, this following that he has, he's definitely like the Mick Jagger of his age. He's got that. Before there were rock stars, he was a rock star. Like, he is so famous now. Everybody knows him. I mean, talk about keeping up with the Kardashians. The Kardashians have nothing compared to old Sabby and Sarah down in the Ottoman Empire. And they never really left the Ottoman. They were just kind of bopping around that whole area of the world. So they are entertainment for everyone. Then what happened is he met this guy named Nathan of Gaza. Nathan of Gaza is another one I think had another personality disorder. I mean, it's like a moth to the flame. Every single person in this whole story probably has a personality disorder. I mean, that's all I kept thinking reading these accounts, because I'm like, I think most people that would come in contact with him would be like, okay, all right. Some people believed him, but these were people that were more probably in like religious psychosis or something, that weren't necessarily like bipolar or narcissistic or whatever. Every single character though around Sabbaty is absolutely got some sort of clinical personality disorder. It's like the blind leading the fucking blind, and they all think they're the greatest thing. Like, they all think that the world just revolves around them. So Nathan of Gaza is no different. Nathan of Gaza believed that he was like Sabbaty's right-hand man. So he became his like henchman. He told people that he was the reincarnation of Elijah, because why not? Of course he is. Like, why not? Why would not he be the reincarnation? Of course he is, right? Nathan went so far as to say, oh, I've had prophecies myself because, I'm Elijah, in case you didn't know. Did you know? Did you know I'm Elijah? Like, I'm Elijah, and that's my friend. He's like the Messiah. Like, If you didn't know, you know now, and see Sarah like that. She's his wife. Like on Wednesdays we wear pink. Like, you can't sit with us. But just so you know, like, we're the most important. We're the cool kids. So, So just so you know, me as Elijah, I hear from God, as does Sabbaty, as does Sarah, because we're the special ones. And you have to listen to me because I am God's special little person. And the Masonic age, Messianic age, same thing, right? Masonic, Messianic, same thing. It's going to start in 1666. It's interesting, it's 666, right? Now, what's also fascinating about this, my friends, is there were some Puritans. So a lot of the Gentiles in Europe, again, this was purely entertainment for them. This was like watching a car wreck. Yeah, this was like rubbernecking. Like, what's gonna happen next? It's like a reality show. Like, who's gonna throw the next dish? Like, who's going to prison next? Like, who's gonna be embezzling? Like, this is most of the Gentiles in the Western world are like totally pure entertainment. That's all this is for them. However, there is this group of Puritans at this time called the Fifth Monarchist. They were an extreme sect that were established in 1649 who thought Jesus would come back in 1666. So they latched on to Sabby, being the second coming of Christ. He never said he was the second coming of Christ. He said he's the first coming of the Messiah. But they were like, oh, he's just a little bit mistaken because, Jesus already came. He's this. So now he's got this small, I'm just like, what? Like, this is just crazy. Like, he's got this, we always think our timeline's like the roughest, but then you look back in history and you're like, what? What the fuck? So they're kind of supporting him. It's wild. It's wild. So then Nathan kind of he clutches on to that. Like, yeah, you're right, because God told me, because, I'm Elijah, that this new age is going to start. It's going to kick off in 1666. And they go to Jerusalem to, like, usher in. And actually, like, this is so petty, y'all. I would have been eating my popcorn. If I could time travel back to this and, like, be invisible and just eat my popcorn and watch this go down, I would. So Nathan, this band of brothers, this band of One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, all these people with these major psychological disorders that probably should be hospitalized, in their caravan, are coming into Jerusalem to be hailed as the coming. Here is our Lord and Savior, Sabbatean, and Nathan, and Sarah. Oh, and Rafi, the super rich guy that's like bankrolling this whole thing, that beats himself at night. He's there too. And then we've got that Abraham guy who literally forged documents, fake news, to make him. They come into Jerusalem like any good narcissist. They don't see their downfall, right? They think that they're just going to be, people are going to fall at their feet. They're going to, like, throw flowers at them. I'm sure Nathan thought he was going to have a harem of women, and the people of Jerusalem are like, no, absolutely not. They just are like, not impressed. You need to go back to the psych ward. Not impressed. Yeah, thanks for helping us out with the taxes, but nah, brah. Like, nah. And so then Nathan goes, oh, you know what? I heard from God. I've got good news, my friends. It's not Jerusalem. Jerusalem's not going to be like the capital. It's Gaza. We're going to go to Gaza, which he's Nathan of Gaza. So lucky for Nathan, he's got connections in Gaza. Now, once they settle in Gaza, it gets even more intense. Think about the rapture, the TikTok rapture videos, right? Same thing is happening. All these Jewish people in Eastern Europe somehow start thinking they're going to get beamed up, like a rapture. And there's no rapture in the Bible. Like, the rapture is a very new concept. So it's interesting that we see this now in the 1600s in the Jewish. I don't even think there was a rapture for the Christians at this point. That was more of the 1800s? Is that when the rapture? Correct me if I'm wrong in the comment section, but that's when the rapture became a thing. It's not in the Bible. That there would be a rapture, but maybe the Christians got this idea from the Jews at this point, because in Eastern Europe, these Jewish people were just like anticipating 1666. Like, they were really anticipating it. They were starting to sell all their stuff. Hello, that happened on TikTok back in October when people thought the rapture was coming. They were selling their homes, selling their cars. They even some of them were taking the roofs off of their houses so that they could be beamed up. Like, this is how this is why mental illness needs to be treated, because psychosis travels. And even though I'm laughing at Sabbatean and like the antics of him and his caravan of people, when I read that, I actually had a lot of empathy for the victims in his wake, right? Like, there were victims, like literal people. I guess they had free will choice, but my heart broke when I saw that. Yeah. So anyway, in preparation for the coming of the Masonic age. And this is all gearing up to the year 1666. So we're on the heels of 1666. Well, in 1665, the year before, Samadhi, he has a lot of power at this point. And this is again why I compare him to Richard II, because he's got too much power for somebody that's so mentally unstable. So he had been kicked out of Smyrna, right? I told you guys that, like his hometown, he was kicked out a long time ago, but now he's got this huge following, huge financial support. He's super wealthy now because he's being bankrolled by all of these eccentric people. He's got fans. He's probably got, side chicks and groupies and all this stuff. He's got these other mentally disabled people that are totally leaning into his delusions. They themselves have delusions. And so this psychosis is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. He is now very dangerous. He's now a very dangerous person. He's always been dangerous, but before he had power, that danger could only go so far. But now that he has literally unlimited power, he's extremely dangerous, which was never the case with Yahshua. Right? With Yahshua, no one was ever afraid of him. People were now afraid of Sabbatean and Nathan and Sarah. They're afraid of these people because they're fucking crazy. They're crazy. They're insane. And so Sabbatean goes back to Smyrna, his hometown, where he was originally kicked out of, and literally he is so powerful at this point that people either have to like fall on the sword, like eat crow pie, humble pie, and like take a knee to him and just embrace him and accept him. And those that won't embrace him or accept him, they have to flee with their lives. All jokes aside, this is now serious. Because again, I'm going to remind you, Yeshua never did that. He never killed people for not believing him. This guy is killing people who don't believe him to be the Messiah. So if you don't bow to his delusions, your life is on the line. And so people are running and hiding at this point. So his ego, his narcissism, his grandiose self-importance is through the roof. So at this point, he decides, you know what? I am going to go to Constantinople, where the Sultan's palace is, because this is the Ottoman Empire at this time, because I'm going to be the new Sultan. You might think, what the fuck? How would he have said that? I'm going to be the new Sultan. He's not Islamic. We're going to get to that. Why is he saying as the Messiah he's going to be the new Sultan? Well, there was a quote that said, with the coming Messiah from scripture, that you're going to defeat the old dragon to become the new dragon. So he's in this chase for power, to own this empire. You know, to be the Sultan is to be in charge of the whole Ottoman Empire. And the Ottoman Empire at this point was like, I mean, they were no joke. They were powerful. The Sultan was very powerful. And so Sabbatean is definitely in this like race for power. This is nothing about helping the world. It's nothing about bringing peace to the world, but he's using this concept subconsciously, probably in his deluded mind, to gather more power for himself. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. He has all these men and women around him who are yes people. His mother was a yes person. This kid's never been told no before, right? And anything bad that's happened in the past was just now proof, just propagated this theory that he was the Messiah. So he gets to Constantinople, and he basically goes up to the Sultan. He was like, yeah, I'm going to be the Sultan now. And the Sultan's like, what? LOL? Like, come again? Like, what? He's like, yeah, I'm going to be the Sultan now. He's like, no, you're not going to be the Sultan now. No, not going to happen. At this point, a lot of his followers are like, who followed him there are like, oh shit. I think they thought he had some plan where he was going to like, I don't know, as the Messiah, like bippity boppity boo his way into taking the Sultan's power. But I don't think they realized he was just going to go up to him and be like, hey, it's my turn now. You've been the Sultan long enough. Now it's my turn. It's only fair, dude. Like, we need to share. Like, give me the power. And when they realized that that was what he was going to do, they were like, oh my God, he really had no plan. And the Sultan, the Ottoman Empire, I mean, like most empires, they were brutal. Like they could be very brutal in the way that they handled their expansion, the way that they handled rebellions. And so some of his followers were very disillusioned when they saw the way Sabati handled it. And so they ran. They were like, oh my God, we're all going to be killed. Like we're all going to be executed. What the fuck? So they ran. But Sabati's still in this like delusional state that no, like the Sultan's going to wake up and realize that I am the Messiah and he's going to give me his crown. Because why not? Everybody's always given me what I wanted. Why wouldn't the Sultan give me my crown? So the Sultan, now he's got this guy, Sabati, in his palace that's basically like a child demanding he give him the crown. The Sultan is smart. Like a lot of these empires, you know, for better or for worse, they don't become big and strong by being stupid. Yeah, these are smart men. And he's like, if I kill this guy, it's going to turn him into a martyr, which means that I'm going to have a bigger uprising on my hand. So I just need to like arrest him for a second. Like, so they arrest him and they actually place him in like really luxurious apartments. So it's kind of like a house arrest. Like maybe if they'd like thrown him in a dungeon, maybe he would have had some sort of realization that he's not the Messiah. But they stick him in these luxury apartments and they're like, they hold him there and they don't really quite know what to do. Like they know he has a following. They know that he's got fans in Europe, although most of those fans are just basically gawkers. They're buying tickets to the show. They're not actually believing that he's the Messiah. But this is an interesting situation for the Sultan. And I actually, if I had time, I would love to deep dive more into the political papers, anything written about this by the Sultan, because he is literally between a rock and a hard place. If he executes him, it's going to cause a lot of uprisings. There's a lot of Jewish communities in the Ottoman Empire. There's a lot of uprisings in general. Like we want to just try to keep status quo as much as possible so we can still continue to focus on like Wallachia and like expanding our empire. We don't need to worry about like our own lands, people having uprisings. So I don't want to kill this guy because it's going to spark stuff that we just as the Sultan don't have time for. We don't have time for this. And but he can't like keep him forever, right? But he sits, you know, Sabati stays locked away for a while. So basically he decides, the Sultan says, okay, I'm gonna let this be Sabati's choice. I'm gonna let this be his choice. And so in November of 1666, so again, he went there in 1665, now it's 1666. He's been costing the Ottoman Empire money to keep him alive in these luxury apartments. And so one of the Ottoman's men goes to him and says, okay, we have a solution. You're not going to be the Sultan. It's not going to happen. But we will let you live and you'll be free if you convert to Islam. If you don't convert to Islam, we are going to execute you. And Sabati, being the Messiah that he was, said, absolutely, my friend. I've always wanted to be Muslim. You read my mind. I've always wanted to be Muslim. So he converted to Islam. Now, he lost a lot of followers at this time, rightly so, because he basically just like saved himself, really. And you know, honestly, I might do the same thing. I don't know. I'm not in that position. But he did keep about 300 families that continued to follow him. And this I found really interesting. Something I really did not know about the Jewish faith. And I would, again, love to hear from my community members who grew up Jewish. Let me know more about this. When I was researching this situation, when he accepted Islam and how did these 300 families continue to follow him, it's because, according to a lot of scholars, Judaism, unlike other religions, never claims to be God's number one religion. Judaism is more of a philosophy-based religion. And so with that being said, it can mirror itself in other faiths. It can camouflage itself with other faiths. So this is kind of the foundation. And so that's why these 300 families that continue to follow him were like, oh, we can adopt Islamic principles into our faith because our faith actually allows for that. I know that sounds weird thinking about all the Palestine-Israel issues today between the Muslims and the Jewish people. This was the 1600s, so it was a different time. But these 300 families, excuse me, not people, more people, it's 300 families, stayed very loyal to Sabbatean even after he converted to Islam. After his conversion, he was exiled, where he lived the rest of his life in exile. Now, what's interesting when we get into Jacob Frank in the 1700s with Catherine, and we get into the Sabbatean death cult as it is today, one thing that's very interesting that is reminiscent of this time in the latter part of his life where he's exiled and he's a practicing Muslim and these 300 people followed him, is that this is what people claim that the Sabbateans still do. On the outside, they're one faith, but on the inside, they're another. So on the outside, these Sabbateans were Islamic now, but on the inside, they practice this form of Judaism. And of course, this is going to evolve as we get to Zevi, he was quite a narcissist, obviously, probably a psychopath. He was definitely, as the kids say today, unhinged. He was very unhinged. And he was threatening people's lives, for sure. If they didn't accept him, he would, like a conqueror, he would execute them. But that's like a conqueror. In my opinion, looking at this from 2025, that is what Sabby was after, power. And his behavior, besides like maybe the more eccentric stuff like dressing a fish as a baby and, marrying a Torah scroll, besides that eccentric stuff, he really followed kind of the playbook that a lot of these emperors and these monarchs follow for power. The things he does that might be considered violent are things that kings would do when they're expanding their realm, right? It's like political assassinations, not necessarily personal, even though maybe it was a little bit personal because he believed he was the Messiah. So as far as like the evolution of the Sabbatean religion, when we get to Jacob Frank in the 1700s, this is where we start to see very diabolical and sinister behavior. Even though, again, I don't want to let Sabby off the hook. I think Sabby, and I'm calling him Sabby because that's my nickname for. I make up nicknames a lot for these characters that I study in history. Sabby, if he had been medicated, like if he lived in our day and he was medicated, he might have been a very functioning member of society that would not, even if he was a little psychopathic, he might not have hurt people, But Jacob Frank, he's diabolical. Like, Sabby seemed to be a victim of his own mental illness in a lot of ways, where Jacob Frank is a literal, monster. And that's where we're going to pick up with Catherine in part 2, where we talk about the evolution of this death cult. Now, one thing you need to know is that Sabby passed away in 1676. And his family, in order to gain control over this religion, the Sabbatean, now sect of Judaism, said that his soul was still wandering the earth, that his soul had not moved on, and this was a way for them to keep power and control. But by them claiming this is what's going to open the door to Jacob Frank, who was born literally 100 years after Sabby in 1726. And so that's where we're going to pick up in part 2 with Catherine. Now, part 2, you don't have to wait for part 2. You do not have to wait, my friends. As I post this, that has also already been posted. So part 2 cannot be on YT at all, because we're going to be talking about some wild debauchery with the Sabbateans. So I don't want to have to worry about censorship. I don't want to have to worry about my words. This is obviously not for kids. When you talk about this kind of stuff, I mean, obviously you guys are parents, you pick what you want your kids to see or not, but we're going to get in some very adult, violent actions. And so part 2 is over on RUMBLE, so you can just mosey on over. I can't link it below again because of YT. Just RUMBLE, same channel name. That's the word I was looking for. Or you can go to my Substack. My Substack is in the description box below. You can follow me on Substack, and these scandalous, spicy videos that I put over on RUMBL only, BLE only, also are uploaded to Substack. So you can watch them on Substack too. So make sure you either go to RUMBLE, subscribe to me over there so you get notified, or go down to my Substack. You've got 2 places to watch part 2. I cannot wait to hear your thoughts. Catherine and I debated between doing all of this together in one episode. I'm looking at my clock right now. I'm at 1 hour, 45 minutes. Now, it might be shorter by the time I edit it, but I told Catherine, I was like, listen, this is a lot. Like, we can't talk about the Sabbateans without talking about the backstory of how they grew. And so I decided to do an introduction of part 1. That was just me. So I didn't waste Catherine's time, her precious time, so that we can go directly into the heart of the matter. The Sabby, Zevi stuff, that's just the foundation. What we just talked about, that's the introduction, the foundation. That's just background information to know. What we're going to get into next in part 2 is the real important stuff, in my opinion, because this is what affects us today in 2025. And so please follow us to RUMBLE or to Substack. Thank you, as always, to all of my patrons and my producers. I'm so grateful for you guys. We make no money doing this, and it has been very, very hard, but I'm not going to stop. Todd and I have had many conversations, and he understands how important this is, and he understands how important this community is. And so, but we definitely have taken a financial hit. I've been very punished for doing my research the way that I do it, and not bowing down to what the establishment wants me to say, the system wants me to say about this research. And so I am so grateful to all of our patrons and producers. You guys have no idea how much you help us out each month. I also have now learned that you can donate on Substack. I didn't even know that. And so I've got a few people on Substack who have donated. I'm going to figure out a way. That's why I didn't do a reel at the beginning of this episode, because I'm going to try to figure out a way to combine it all onto a reel from both Substack and Patreon. So all of you guys are recognized, because we would not be able to do this without you guys. You guys mean the world to us over on Patreon and now on Substack, because otherwise we would be bankrupt, because every time I load a video, I lose money. And so that's what they do. That's what they do, right? To try to bankrupt you so you stop talking. But we're not going to stop talking. And so I thank you guys so much. All the information, if you want to join our Patreon or Substack, all that's in the description box below. As always, if you want to join the Fusion Body Studio, you can use my name, Brice20, BRICE20, all caps, at checkout to get 20% off your first 6 months with us. But with that being said, guys, let's go hang out on RUMBLE or on Substack and get into part 2.